Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to The Truth. I'm your host, the one you love the most, Niall Heston, back with a brand new episode here in The Truth. Back once again with my boy AJ Ponciano. AJ, how you doing here today?
I'm doing great now. How about yourself?
I'm doing great as well. And before we went on air here, you were actually on the ground putting your phone in, and I just wanted to throw out there to the fans, why don't you move your head a little bit? Because you got a collection of whey or protein or whatever you got going on back there. It's like Mount Everest of protein.
That's my caffeine addiction. That's what that is. That is
Oh,
that
caffeine
is
addiction.
where is it? Pre-workouts, just pre-workouts, creatine.
So those are like empty bottles though, or are those full?
Uh there's a couple that are still have some in there, but for the most part empty.
How long has that collection been going on?
Too long. I mean, those are 3, 4 high. What is it? 5 high,
Yeah.
5 high. I mean, all 30 to 35 servings per 400 milligrams of caffeine. Not the best. I don't suggest having caffeine addiction.
So I don't know if Cantrell remembers me, but if you do go in there at some point and ask Cantrell about the first time I took pre workout, I hope he remembers the story because I had never taken pre workout before. I don't believe in it. I still don't. Sorry. And I was like taking it and I didn't like it because I was just itchy. I was itchy. I
That's
was
the point.
shaking, like
It
whatever.
it, it did its,
I
it did
know,
its
but
thing.
that's just
That's the fun part. I love the feeling of like
not for
bugs
me.
crawling underneath my skin when I take it. Like that's the best part.
Maybe, I mean, I'm at the end of my career, so maybe I guess I could go back and try it. Or like if I start lifting after I'm done playing baseball, like I guess trying it. But I just felt like it was all mental. But that's a conversation for a different time. My point is, Cantrell was there. It wasn't even like an organized team lift or anything. Not like any of those lifts are organized. And we were, I don't even know, it was like me and like six other, seven other guys, and I took seven. Cantrell was just laughing because I was just sitting there going like this the whole time. I was like, man, I don't like this. Like I was trying to deadlift. I didn't know what I was doing. I believe it was my freshman year. And I was like, yeah, this is why I don't take pre-workout. But I might have needed pre-workout if I didn't have that much energy tonight. Because as mentioned, it is a Wednesday night. Now, granted, I am a night owl, but still, been a long day, long week. Hard to believe it's already Wednesday. But tomorrow, for us recording, is the beginning of Thursday Night Football. And for those that don't know, we had started to record and my Wi-Fi cut out. So let me re-say this beautiful phrase of football. You got Thursday, you got the NFL, which is great. Get your feet wet in the water for football. Friday, you got college football, a couple games. I know Oregon played last week against Michigan State. So, the non-important teams play on Friday. Then on Saturday, you got a full slate of college football, right? Sunday, full slate of NFL football, including this week with a London game. And then Monday, to cap it all off, you got Monday Night Football. So Tuesday and Wednesday are the days in between where you get time off. So it's a great time of year. But anyways, guys, we were doing week 6, Thursday night, start, sits, sleepers, and bust matchup, an NFC West matchup between the 49ers and the Seahawks. Why don't you go ahead and give me your must starts for this matchup?
Yeah. So my first one, I'm gonna go with JSN. I'm gonna throw shade JSN of the Ohio State who just shut it down Iowa. It happens. It's all right. But yeah, Jordan JSN. I mean JSN's been
Rough game for the Hawks.
it's been a rough season for the Hawks.
Whoa, whoa, whoa! I wouldn't just jump the gun right there. I mean, we've had a good season. We lost to Iowa. Hey, we've lost to Iowa State and Ohio State, and they're both ranked. All right, we're just a classic Iowa 8-4 team every year. But last week was rough to watch. Let me just say that.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm gonna go with JSN. JSN has finally emerged. One of the things about JSN is like every other week he sees a good amount of targets. Last week he got his first touchdown, 4 receptions, 31 yards against the Giants. I mean, he's going against a divisional game. Uh, One of the things Metcalf's gonna be one of the big guys there. They're gonna just go over. This could be a game that we see JSN get another 10 plus targets. Usually 10 plus targets. Last time, one of the other things is also when he gets 10 plus targets, he's done that twice this year at 16 and 12. He has 8 and 12 catches. One game he did have 117 yards. Another game he only had 51. But if you're in a PPR league and your guy gets you 8 catches, 51 yards, and he's in your flex or wide receiver 2 position, you take that. And JSN, I think, has probably been part of the part of the red zone offense a little bit more. Like I said, he just got his first touchdown last week against the Niners. Niners number one cornerback, not Fuanga. I always forget his name. He was injured last year. He's now out. He's injured again. Now he's out on IR. So that means the wide or cornerback 3 would now be on JSN instead of the quarterback 2 on the 49ers. And like I said, I think Metcalf's going to take a large amount of those targets away. And then the second guy I have is Jordan Mason. I mean, Jordan Mason has been great all year. He's had two, I won't say bad games, but he's had two underwhelming games against teams that I thought he would have big games against. But outside that, he's still averaging over 100 yards per game. At this point, he's averaging 21 carries a game, which is huge. I mean, he's getting all the opportunities there with the 49ers. He's basically scored a touchdown every week, 3 out of 5 weeks at this point. Not much of a receiving threat, but like I said, he's getting the opportunities. He's averaging over 20 rush attempts per game. And the 49ers offense, you can't ask for anything more than that. You want opportunity, he gets opportunities.
Yeah, so for me, I got two must starts that I want to talk about here. The first one is going to be Brandon Ayuk. The second is going to be Tyler Lockett. So first, Brandon Ayuk. I believe it was just last week I was already saying that Brandon Ayuk is a bust, at least for as far as the season was concerned and particular matchups. Last week he finally kind of broke out into the scene. 8 receptions for 147 yards. The 4 weeks before that, excuse me, didn't have more than 10 points. So his coming out party after signing that massive deal finally came last week. Obviously, Debo, Kittle. I know Kittle's a bit banged up. I think he's still good to go for this week. Debo should be back to fully healthy. Now you got the core three there in Ayuk, Samuel, and Kittle. You got to be pleased all in all. And it's just kind of putting the cookie in the cookie jar and figuring out who's going to get the receptions. But Brandon Ayuk's one of those guys I think will continuously get some receptions, especially that he was able to kind of break back out of the scene there. So I like the matchup for him, and I think he's going to continue that momentum. Maybe he won't get the 22 plus points, but I think he'll get at least 15, which would be a comfortable option. And secondly, as I mentioned, Tyler Lockett. I feel like every year I'm counting Tyler Lockett out, but Tyler Lockett, another so far decent season, 43rd position ranked wide receiver, so there is still room for improvement. But last 2 weeks, 11 fantasy points, 4 and 5. Had only one game of 4 or less receptions, which was week 2 against New England, 2 for 15, but has been relatively consistent, 11 to 13 points. Still is looking for that first touchdown. Could be a perfect opportunity for Geno to get him involved and get him going. So I think Lockett and Ayuk, two veterans. Obviously, Lockett a little bit older than Ayuk, but Ayuk, after signing that massive deal, finally came into the picture. And then Lockett, I think, could be a safe option as well, especially if the 49ers are going to be scoring a lot of points. In order for the Seahawks to win, they're going to have to score a lot of points and catch up there as well. Okay, what about sits?
So I'm actually going to go with Geno Smith. He's just been a yard merchant. I mean, he has only 5 touchdowns to 4 interceptions this year. He does have a touchdown every game, but he also has almost he averages more than an interception per game at this point, just under an interception per game. Uh, he's just like I said, touchdown or not touchdown, yard merchant has almost 1,500 yards up to this point, averaging basically 300 yards per game. I Outside of that, I mean, he doesn't really give you much upside. He has been averaging the most rushing yards per game at 30 per game at this point, but I don't really trust that against the Niners defense with Fred Warner there and those linebackers. I think that this could be a good wide receiver game. Just I don't trust Geno Smith to get you that touchdown that you need. Most fantasy leagues, 0.05 points per yard from per quarterback. Geno Smith is not going to get. He's going to give you a lot of yards, but he's not going to give you those touchdowns. There's a good chance he's going to throw an interception. He'll give you 3 fantasy points on the ground with averaging those 30 yards. I I just don't against the Niners defense. I did say they were a little bit frauds in our other show in our takeaways from last week, but their short game, their at least passing game has been pretty solid. They're averaging just around 200 yards per game through the air. Geno Smith, one of his big things, like I said, is getting those yards per air. That's how he gets his fantasy points, and the 49ers have been good at it. They also haven't gave up a lot of passing touchdowns up to this point. And my second guy is going to be Juwan Jennings. Juwan Jennings is someone who I picked up in our fantasy league, just kind of last moment when everyone got injured. But one thing about Jennings is that Ayuk's back, like how you said. There's very good chance Debo, he should be used more. Wasn't really used that much last week. I think he only had like 4 or 5 targets. I don't expect him to have only 4 or 5 targets. I could see that close going to 7 to 8. And Juwan finally had a bad game. It felt like first 2 games of the year, like when both of those guys were healthy, Ayuk and Debo, he had 5 catches, 64 yards, 2 catches, 37 yards. In those next two games, Debo, I believe, was injured those next two games. And then Ayuk was still kind of not doing that. What was still not doing well. He had that big game with the 3 touchdowns, 175 yards, 11 receptions. That next week had 88 yards on 3 receptions, and then last week 1 reception for 13 yards. There's a clear difference in targets, especially last week only 4 targets. The first 2 weeks 4 and 5 targets. Those next 2 weeks where he had his big weeks 12 and 6. He isn't the main part of this offense, especially in a game like this where if Ayuk really is back, Debo should be even more healthy. Like I said, Jordan Mason is averaging over 20 yards per carry. I mean, if his targets are down, if he's not getting over 5 targets, he hasn't been a fantasy difference.
Well, let me go ahead and do my sits again because I guess I had just muted my mic. If you guys can't tell through the video, I have my cough back, which is just awesome. So I'm obviously muting my mic when I'm not talking so I can kind of, not pain your guys' ears. I've already pained AJ's ears enough by blowing and talking into the mic very loudly. So again, let me just go ahead and go into my sits, even though I actually said the greatest line that I've ever. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. So, anyways, my sits are going to be two guys in the Seahawks offense. The first being Geno Smith, as AJ mentioned. Geno Smith, what a weird stat line. Week 1 had like 179 yards. Week 4 had like 390 passing yards. He's had exactly one passing touchdown in each of the 5 weeks and has 4 interceptions through 5 weeks, including 3 games of an interception. And then he had like 4 rushes for 72 yards last week. I mean, like, what is this? I mean, it's a weird, really, really weird Geno Smith, and it's very hard to manage from that matter. So it's one of those things that I think going up against the 49ers defense, it's going to cause him some problems. Obviously, the 49ers defense have a good defense as a whole. Yeah, he's going to get his yards, maybe to guys like Lockett, Metcalf, which is why I think that I'm a little bit higher on a guy like Geno Smith. But in the grand scheme of things, how much production is he going to get? Who really knows, right? The 49ers defense is pretty solid there. Lead into my second guy, which is Kenneth Walker. I know Kenneth Walker is healthy, which is always great when Kenneth Walker is healthy. He missed weeks 2 and 3 with injury. He's been really good when he's been on the field. He had 19 points in week 1, 33 in week 3, and I think like 14. Sorry, week 4. I think like 14 last week there in week 5. So all in all, Kenneth Walker has been a great guy as far as fantasy is concerned. But again, going up against the 49ers defense, although the 49ers defense at times has looked spotty, they looked really good last week. And I think that's going to continue here this week. And on top of that, Kenneth Walker only had 5 carries last week, so it was strictly reception volume, which was where he was able to get most of his fantasy points from. So I am betting low on the Seahawks offense, particularly those two guys there. The Seahawks offense is going to need to compete, obviously, with 49ers offense and Brock Purdy and whatnot. And if they're able to do that, they're going to be in a good position. But I think it's going to be difficult. And regardless, I think this has the potential to be a low-scoring affair there. All right, what about sleepers?
It's got to be George Kittle. George Kittle was drafted a lot later. I think they definitely should have. And that also kind of goes towards my point. I didn't mention him about the Juwan Jennings thing. He's been probably the most consistent player on this 49ers offense outside of Jordan Mason. I mean, you know what you're going to get out of him. He's averaging just over 55 yards per game. He has 3 touchdowns, especially 3 touchdowns in the last 3 games here. And big thing, it's just the receptions. He's averaging almost 6 receptions per game. So far this year, 8, 4, 7, 4. In the last 4 games. It's one of those things that he's going to consistently give you those numbers at this point in his career. You know what he's going to get you. He's going to get you that 13 to 15 fantasy points, which for the tight ends, I mean, Tucker Kraft, I believe, was the tight end one last week, and with that big game, moved into like the top 10 for tight ends for total fantasy points. I mean, the tight end position has been very spotty. I mean, Mark Andrews has still less than 100 yards, and I think less than 20 receptions this year up to this point. I mean, it's just the tight end position has been weird. As you mentioned in other shows, Sam Laporte is dealing with the injury and hasn't had the best start to this year. Kelsey finally had 2 good games back to back, but that's with Rashid Rice out and him being back to that number 1 target through the air. I mean, Kittle has been one of the most consistent guys at that tight end position, and I don't expect that to change. I mean, the linebacking group here with Seattle isn't the best. That's who's going to be covering Kittle. And yeah, Kittle, last 3 games has had a touchdown. I don't expect have another touchdown every single week like that. But if he's able to get you that 5, 6 catches, give you 50 yards, it's at least 11 points right there with a touchdown upside. He's been targeted in the red zone a lot more this year. That's one of the big things. They haven't been going to the running game of Jordan Mason within the red zone. I was watching the Cardinals game last week when they played, I think Mason had probably 4 or 5 rush attempts within, I don't know, 7 yards, and outside of that, it was just a lot of pass attempts.
So I only have one sleeper, and it's going to be Zach Charbonnet. I know I just said that the Seahawks offense is going to slow down this week, which at the end of the day, like I know, like obviously it's probably going to happen, but Charbonnet historically has had a good time on Thursday Night Football, and I feel like if it's not working with Kenneth Walker, they're going to try to get Charbonnet more involved, particularly in the passing game. It even could be a situation where they're getting blown out and they need to get a couple dump offs to a guy like Charbonnet to eat up some yards, eat up some time, whatever, get your fantasy value there. Regardless, when Charbonnet is on the field, he's a very elite and successful running back. I mean, he's had averaging basically 5.5 carries. I'm sorry, 5.5 to 7.5 yards per carry, which is really good. But basically every week he's had 3 to 5 receptions, which is even better. And obviously that was magnified when Kenneth Walker was injured. But regardless, Charbonnet I think is a guy that could get you a consistent 10 to 12, even if Kenneth Walker is getting the majority of the touches here. I also just love Charbonnet as a player. I really wanted to get him in the dynasty draft a couple of years ago. Wasn't able to do that, but I definitely think he could be not necessarily the future running backs. I think they have a very stable piece in Kenneth Walker, but could be a really good 1-2 punch. I think they should kind of utilize him more, kind of like a team like the Cowboys did with Pollard and Zeke, or even the Green Bay Packers did with Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon. We even have the Lions do it with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. Yeah, they're not necessarily the same running backs as those two, but they can complement each other well. Can keep Kenneth Walker healthy by limiting his repetitions and on the field, which should be the most important thing for the Seahawks. Regardless, Charbonnet should be a very big sleeper going into this matchup, especially since Kenneth Walker is healthy, at least for now. Okay, and then any bus.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go with Tyler Lockett. I'm just not a fan of him this year. He is averaging just under 10 fantasy points per game, which is solid, but it's not because of yards and it's not because of touchdowns. He just gets a lot of targets, and I don't expect to have a lot of targets here. Like I said, I think this is going to be a JSN game. Metcalf, I think, will have a solid game. But my big thing about Lockett, though, I digging deep into numbers, which really doesn't matter. I mean, if he's giving you fantasy points, he's giving you fantasy points. But he's one of the lowest passer ratings when passed to. Normally in his career, his passer ratings throughout the year they're pretty high. He's usually in the hundreds. He's up there when quarterbacks throw to him. This year, he has a career low passer rating when the ball is thrown to him of 69. I mean, he's not doing anything when he gets the ball. He's going to get you a good amount of targets, which I mean that's all you can ask for is targets and the opportunity. But his air yards has been down this year. I want to say he's usually right around 12 to 13 air yards uh, per target. I want to say he's closer to 7 to 8 on his air yards per target this year. I mean, he's just been more of a PPR guy. I mean, that's all he's been. Probably that's all he's been this year, and I don't expect him to have much of a difference. I mean, if he's only going to be right around that mark, I mean, they know that about him at this point. They know that they can just play a cornerback press on him and just have him close to the line. They don't need to do that or shade or linebackers if he goes across the field. He's not really turning the ball upfield. He's getting tackled right when he gets the ball towards the middle of the field. Tyler Lockett, I mean, I'm just going to stay away from him. I like this 49ers defense. I think there's too many other targets. Like Charbonnet, good receiving back there. I think Kenneth Walker's going to get a good amount of run here. Even though I do agree he won't have much success, I think that he will get his normal amount of attempts per game. I think they're going to try to shy away from that. Yeah, JSN. I'm predicting a big JSN end game here.
So for me, my bust is going to be Noah Fant. I feel like I say Noah Fant every week, and it makes me sadder and sadder every time I have to say him with a former Iowa tight end. But it's just not been appealing. I mean, look on the Seahawks as a whole, right? I think each team no more than three great wide receiver options, whether that's wide receivers, tight ends. The Seahawks have those three options. They have I was just said Noah Fant, Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, and JSN. Noah Fant kind of gets the shaft. He's kind of in there to do the dirty work, be a run blocking tight end. I still have optimism that Noah Fant could eventually become the pass catcher that I know he can be, but he is a primarily run blocking tight end. He's still a really great talent as a whole. Just obviously hasn't been working out in Seattle. I think that's obviously going to continue. Who knows? I've seen him get targeted more, especially recently, which is definitely different than before. I mean, even in week 3 had 6 targets, had a couple more targets last week. I mean, he's getting a target a little bit more. He's just a little bit jam packed as far as where he's at in his position on the field, and it's kind of a tough situation for him to be in there. So unfortunate, but maybe someday Noah Fant will be a must start. Okay, do you have a game prediction?
I do. I have it being 24 to, let's say, 17. I think it would probably be pretty. It's an individual game, pretty solid. The 49ers offense hasn't been that good. Seahawks defense, I mean, they've been all right. Both teams are kind of just been middle of the road on the defensive side, giving up both right around 1,000 yards, same amount of touchdowns. I want to say right around the same amount of interceptions. Run defense on both sides has been, like I said, they both just on both sides defensively has been mediocre, offensively both been mediocre. But individual game, I'm going to go with the upset. I think I'm going to go with the Seahawks here. I just don't trust 49ers. They may go 0-3 in their own division, losing to each team up to this point. I mean, if that happens, there's a good chance that I wouldn't say they'd be sellers, but there's a chance Ayuk may be some more drama and he may actually want to be out. Who knows?
So I'm going to go with 20 to 17 49ers. I do think the 49ers win this game. I think it's just because the 49ers have not been winning games and they're very talented as a whole. I know you said they're a big choke job and frauds and things like that, but this is still a really good team. I know they've been dealing with some injuries. I mean, they just lost their kicker, which is not the end of the world. It's Jake Moody, but he's actually had a pretty good career. Thus far, he had a little shaky start to his career, but that's going to be a challenge. And who knows, especially in a close game like divisional games are, it could come down to a missed field goal, a missed PAT, or something like that. But on top of that, I mean, the 49ers as a whole have a far better team. I know they've missed McCaffrey this year, but I think they're going to come into Seattle and get a win. They need a win. It's one of those things that's kind of like a must win for them, not only in their pursuit of winning the NFC West, but having some say in the playoffs as a whole. So for the 49ers, I think they have a little bit more chip on their shoulder coming into this contest. I think Seattle is what? Are they 4-1, 3-2? They Which one are they? Do you know?
I want to say they're 3-2.
Regardless, they have a winning record, which I don't know if a lot of people would expect the Seahawks to have a winning record over the 49ers, but that's the reality we live in. Anyways, I think the 49ers win this game here 2017 in a low scoring affair. Thank you guys for listening to another episode here on The Truth. If you guys did enjoy it, make sure you follow The Truth on Twitter at The Truth as well to stay up to date with the latest information regarding The Truth, including podcast dates, podcast uploads, and other important information you don't want to miss. Make sure you guys also follow The Truth on Instagram and TikTok at the.tt.truth. Are you looking to find a drink that offers peak hydration, raises your energy levels, speeds up your recovery, and keeps your mind sharp to focus memory? Look no further than the Acid Rainwater. I'm excited to partner with Bloodline Sports AZ and Acid Rainwater, which focuses on peak hydration and productivity while also maintaining ecosystem-friendly product. Use code HESSON15, that's HESSON15, for 15% off every purchase. As always, I'm your host, the one you love the most, Niall Hesson, joined once again by AJ Ponciano. Take care and good night.